I guess this is the first episode of the Tiisetso Maloma show. I don't know if I should call it show or podcast. All right, this is the first one. I'm with my, should I say mentor? Should I say friend? I think you wouldn't like me saying mentor, but he is indeed a mentor. I'm with David Chislett. Just let me just read you a bit of bio about David Chislett, and then he will give us a bit of a background and what he does now, because he's done a lot of things. David Chislett was born in Britain, raised in South Africa, and is now a resident of the Netherlands. He's a published author, poet, musician, and artist. He's been an entrepreneur for over 25 years. He says the link that joins everything together in his life is creativity. Mr. Chislett, how are you doing?
I'm well, sir. Thank you.
All right. Cool, man. I've known you for, I don't know, since I think since 2000, and it could be 9. Let it be 9.
It's about right. Yeah.
It's about right. Yeah. Look, I've read a bit about you. Maybe just take us through just a bit about your background and then what it has led you to doing today.
Sure. Well, I basically grew up in the underground rock scene in South Africa, playing in bad punk bands and then managing alternative bands. At the same time, being a music journalist, I used to feature on Barney Simon's show on 5FM, covering.
Oh, that's awesome.
Music. Yeah. And then from there, I progressed into doing a lot of PR work, mainly for entertainment clients, independent record labels, music festivals. If anybody's watching this remembers the Edgar's sessions at the Baseline in Joburg.
I remember that. I've went to a couple of those actually.
Yeah, so I did all the media and the marketing PR stuff for those shows as well.
Awesome.
And then after, I mean, I was in the music industry for a long time, and then I thought, okay, it's time for me to move on and do other things. So I wrote a book called 1212, a step-by-step guide to the SA music industry. And the idea of that book was to take everything that was in my head that I had to learn the hard way because there was no one to teach. And I wanted to give it to the world and say, okay, now I'm leaving.
Yeah, was that your first book?
Yeah, it was the second one, I think.
Okay.
And it didn't work that way. I ended up spending 3 or 4 years traveling South Africa, giving workshops in townships and nightclubs and all over the place, trying to help musicians understand the business side of music better.
Yeah.
And once that was finished, I then actually ended up moving overseas to the Netherlands, where I kind of bringing all of those ideas together, the helping people, the creativity, the inspiration. And I talk a lot about what creativity is and how to get more of it and why it's so important when you need to deal with change.
Yeah, maybe let me just rewind you a bit. You said you were born in Britain. How old were you when you came down to South Africa?
3.5. I was very young.
Okay. All right, no, sweet. And then look, I'm just gonna go in different tangents, and hopefully I will, cover what I've always been interested in knowing, and also, to anyone who's watching, segments that I'm sure will be helpful to them as well. Your move to the Netherlands, what brought that about? And why a move? Because like moving from one country to another, that's quite huge.
Yeah, I wasn't born in South Africa, so as a and I grew up in the 70s, in the beginning of all of that ridiculous term, the unrest.
Yes.
And in the state of emergency, I was a teenager, and I never really felt like I belonged. As a British South African, other South Africans, white South Africans, didn't really accept me. They were always like, "No, go back. You don't belong here." And then, obviously, after apartheid, with more political equality, then I was much older, and my place was also now difficult because I was an old white male in an environment that's trying to stimulate young Black people to be able to, actually live their lives properly. So that made things complex for me. which I don't have a problem with, but that was just my economic reality.
Yes.
So after about 10 years, when I'd finished with all the workshops and the book, I thought, I need a rest. I'm a bit tired. So I'm going to go and visit some of my friends in England and in the Netherlands. And so I bought a ticket, a return ticket.
Do you still have family, say, in Britain, maybe across Europe?
I've got extended family, uncles, aunts, and cousins.
Okay.
Yeah, in the UK, but also in Australia and in America.
All right, sweet.
So yeah, it's family all over the place.
Okay, no, that's awesome, I guess.
Yeah, and then the plan was never to leave. The plan was I need a break, I need a holiday.
Yeah.
And then I met somebody, and I ended up getting married and having 2 kids. So now I'm here.
I'm sure that didn't happen in a month. So
no, not quite.
Yeah. Now, look, I think, and I think it's something that we've talked about a bit. When I met you, you were working on a project. I think you were writing some stuff for, I think, the Department of Arts and Culture. Yeah, and you were that creative. I remember in that office at Meerkat Media, I don't know if I was the youngest, but in terms of experience, I was.
Yeah.
And everyone was maybe 10 years into, you could say, self-employment, being an entrepreneur, running their own business, which I'm very much grateful for. And one of the recurring themes of over the years since I've been talking to you is, entrepreneurship is creativity, and then within entrepreneurship space also there's that segment of the creatives, which is music, which is writing, and all that sort of thing. So the theme that always came through is around, I guess, anxiety. Yeah. Were you anxious when you like decided to visit Europe? What was the situation? You mentioned the economic reality then.
Yeah. Look, you're right. As an entrepreneur, you deal with uncertainty every single day. There's no paycheck, there's no medical insurance, there's no pension fund. You've got to take care of all of that yourself. And if you don't get paid that month, you can't.
Yes.
So not only had I grown up in a way that was quite disconnected from day-to-day reality, but as an entrepreneur, I was very used to this amount of uncertainty. So I think for someone like me, it was much easier to say, okay, I'm going to go and live in another country because it was just another category of uncertain stuff. And I know how to deal with uncertainty. I know how to behave, what actions I need to take and how I need to prepare myself emotionally and psychologically to do that.
So it's more like the entrepreneurial creative space gives you that street wisdom, let's say.
Yeah, I suppose you could. I mean, that's an interesting analogy. You could actually almost call it like street wisdom, because it's about how you do things, not so much what you do. But what is important is that you act, that you do. You can have a fantastic idea for a business or for anything, but if you don't take any action, nothing's going to change.
And often when we talk about, creativity, anxiety, or rather just, let's say, anxiety, we just, talk about it. There's this depression, there's this anxiety, but more so it's caused by sort of technical things, which is really not maybe, getting work, that sort of thing. So when you went to Europe, did you have savings to, stay whatever certain amount of time? What was the situation, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I had a bit of cash, but not enough to be comfortable. So it was definitely making me anxious.
Yeah.
I knew that. So I made a plan, and I organized to go and work in a pub in the middle of England, in a tiny village in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I could live in the roof of the pub, so I didn't have to pay rent. And I worked every day, and there was nothing to do in the village, so I couldn't spend my money. And I worked there for 4 months and saved up a lot of pounds.
Did you arrange that prior to going to Europe?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, awesome. Through friends, or was it like
through an old high school friend?
Okay, no, that's awesome.
Down the road.
Yeah. And I think, that's what most people can take with more so, visiting a new place, just traveling, maybe say the world, and then just organize jobs, even if maybe you don't know someone. But I'm sure most, like for example, in South Africa, there is is it Pnet that advertises jobs? But and I'm sure abroad as well, there are those sort of sites that market jobs. I'm sure people, can actually do that, moving to a new country or moving to a new city, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess one of the reasons we've been connecting a lot, rather than we've got a working relationship from the past, is that I own a publishing company, and we have now licensed one of your books called the Entrepreneur's Emotional Toolbox. Yeah. I guess it just sort of connects to what we've been talking about, and I'm gonna get to the book in a bit. So you said your first book was a poetry book, right?
Actually, my first book was a collection of short stories.
And then one two about the South African music industry.
Yeah.
And then this one, the collection of poems. I remember we did work on it.
Yeah.
What was it? Without You?
It was called For You, Like You.
Yes, awesome. And and it's still available on Amazon, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, awesome. And then the Entrepreneur's Emotional Toolkit, was it the one that followed?
Yes, that was the next one, which I did myself here in the Netherlands, completely just as an ebook until now.
Yes, and it was free for all this time.
Yep.
And looking at the quality of the book, then like it's so high quality, and for that you were giving it away for free. And and I realized, look, I was in publishing yet then, but I was more so looking at my own books. And then as time went by, I said, David, let's try to get this book in bookstores, which we're going to do. So from let's say this podcast is going live during the Global Entrepreneurship Week. I'll just decide on the date on which it's going out. So the Entrepreneurship Week is from the 14th to the 14th, which is 14th of November, to the 20th, which is the Sunday. So at that point, it will be in most bookstores across South Africa. Maybe I know you to have such a high quality book, bring it out for free. Also, that's another thing. Why put so much work and of course some money in writing a book like this, which I'm sure took dedication? In a sense, you sort of taking salient points when about your career, about more so around anxiety and being in the creative space as an entrepreneur. Like, why put out such a book? And the second one being, why free then?
Yeah. I think I put the book out because it was also part of me figuring a lot of stuff out for myself. These days you can go and do an MBA in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
When I started in 1994, being an entrepreneur wasn't really a thing. They work for themselves, and it was always a bit like, oh, what are you doing? So I had to, again, a bit like the music industry book, I had to learn everything the hard way by making lots of mistakes. And I just thought, it would be a really nice thing to be able to do, to be able to put that all down in one place and get it out into the world, for other people to refer to and to use.
Yes.
Because I noticed that a lot of the books that are out there about entrepreneurship now are actually like, their approach is quite corporate. It's all about startup funding and investors and scale up and it's
all those terms.
Yeah, and that's just not the reality of most people who are entrepreneurs, as in they work for themselves. And so I wanted to fill that gap with a book that was accessible, easy to understand, and avoided all that kind of really hardcore capitalist nonsense,
corporate speak, let's say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I published it here in the Netherlands myself, and that's kind of why I did it for free, because I mean, some of you watching this may recognize my name or my voice from something or other in South Africa, but here in the Netherlands, no, nobody knows me.
Yeah.
I have no reputation. I have no brand recognition. So this was a way of putting something out into the world in order to help grow that. So it was a tool. It wasn't a money venture.
Okay. No, that's you know, I hear you, and you know, talking about putting yourself out there also, you could say sort of a meditative experiment, say, not maybe not experiment, but you know, you are reflecting basically, and then you obviously you wanna not necessarily shelve that chapter, but in another sense, shelve it, but put it in a way that someone else can take from it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, and what I wanna put sort of highlight is that you know entrepreneurs are always hustlers, you know. In that, yes, you're writing something, you're putting out for free, you're spending all this money, you're spending all this time and effort on marketing and that, but it's a great product, right? So whatever you put out, you know, I think what comes out for me is that you need to put effort in it. If you have to spend on it, then do spend on it.
Yeah, I think, you know, you've got to hit a certain level of quality with everything you put out. I'm a big believer that done is better than perfect. So
yes,
you know, you'll probably, I mean, when you were checking the manuscript again, you probably found some typing mistakes and stuff like that. It wasn't perfect.
Nothing major. Like it's I would, as a publisher, I would say any book that goes out, it never really is perfect.
Exactly. And so that's very much my philosophy. I would rather have something out in the world which people can react to, can interact with, and then comment on or get in touch with me about, than spend 10 years making sure that it's absolutely perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, there is no such thing.
Absolutely. Now, you know, I'm just gonna go. I'm still gonna go in sort of circles.
It's all
and
good.
and what I want to ask, you know, now is and I'll connect it back to you know speaking about anxiety and sort of the technicalities of getting in that anxious rut, let's say. Is currently, what does David Chislett do? I know I'm sure there's some hobbies there, but like just give us a roundup of what you do, what you know, what you do every day, basically.
Yeah. My current focus is on establishing myself as a keynote speaker on the subject of creativity. So I have a range of keynotes as well as workshops that I present to help people understand the creative process and to become better at actually doing it. In order to get that noticed and to keep it visible, I blog, I have a video podcast of my own. I'm busy writing another book about creativity.
Awesome.
I'm about to publish another book of poetry as well. That'll be the third one now.
So you're busy.
I'm busy, yeah. So I'm busy establishing my track record as someone who is creative, at the same time trying to build my reputation as someone who is an expert on that process and can help other people get more of it and do more of it.
Yes, and then you've got some classes, courses that you run as well. Just maybe,
Well,
highlight that a bit.
It's mainly workshops on the creative process. So not really a course or classes, but that's also part of the program for the book that I'm writing, is that there will be a digital online course that goes with the book as well. So it'll all, you know, if you see me speak, you'll hear about the book and you'll have a chance to sign the course. If you find the course, you can buy the book and you can go and see me speak, and so on and so on. So it's establishing these interconnected islands of things, products, or touch points, which all lead people who find me onto the next thing.
Yes. Now, you know, okay. How do you juggle all this different? I know maybe the synergy, it sort of all of it, it's centered around putting you out there, also helping people. But how do you, like, let's say just in a week, how do you juggle them? How do you think about, I'm prioritizing this one and that one?
Yeah, I divide everything up into projects.
Okay.
And then I use Google Calendar, and I have different colored blocks for different projects, and I literally map it out week by week by booking time into my calendar. So at the moment on Mondays, I'm busy
Yes.
with the creativity canvas. And on Tuesdays, I'm busy with a keynote presentation that I have to do. And on Thursdays, I'm busy with admin. And so I've got this color-coded calendar, and I keep track of everything like that. I mean, it's not sophisticated. I don't have any special apps or anything. It's just a
Okay, that's awesome. I also, struggle with, like, I think a weekly, monthly, I'm forever trying to think, how can I adjust my workload, since also I work on different projects. So Google Calendar, it's more like your go-to resource in terms of managing the projects.
Yeah, I'm really using it as a project management tool.
Okay.
So, I know in my head or somewhere on a document in a folder somewhere exactly what needs to be done on each project. And then the calendar just functions as a reminder that today you're doing that. And then so the reminder goes off, I open the folder, I see where I am, and I move on to the next task.
Okay, I think that works. I just recently started. Well, I was using it before when I had people working for me, but now I'm back to being solo because of COVID.
Yeah.
And I've started using Trello. I don't know if you know the project management. I mean, it's more or less it does this more or less the same things as say Google Calendar. And I just like also I know what I need to do on a specific day, but just seeing it before as a reminder, that's quite helpful. I would urge everyone to get on some software, either Google Calendar or whichever sort of auto reminder that will work for them in doing. Now coming to the book, The Entrepreneur's Emotional Toolkit. It's got several sections. Obviously, we're not gonna go through everything. What are this is usually like a cliche question in interviews.
Yeah.
Sort of, I'm sure you wrote it some time ago.
Yeah.
But since we've been speaking about it, what are the sort of maybe 2-3 things that jump to mind, maybe in relation to what also you are going through? Yeah. Maybe the problems or hiccups that you encounter, but the solutions are in the book. Maybe just your favorite salience from the book.
I think for me, the biggest message, the biggest takeaway from the book is that even though you're an entrepreneur and maybe you're a solo entrepreneur, but doesn't mean you have to do everything alone. I never asked for help. I never asked for advice. I just didn't think that people would. I wasn't sure the information was available, so I never even tried to find it. And that ended up being really bad. That gave me a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, and actually, some of my projects ended up not being as good or having as much impact as they could have, because I just didn't ask for help. I just kind of stayed locked in my box, using only myself as a resource to try and solve the problems that I was encountering. So that's why the book's called The Emotional Toolbox. It's not so much about business strategies or tools or methodologies. It's much more about getting your head right, so that you're in a good space to tackle the challenges that you will encounter when you go out on your own.
So now, how do you go about getting help? I'm sure there's still a dimension of that struggling to ask for help, but I'm sure maybe to one level or a couple of levels you've improved in that. How do you go about not just asking, maybe again attracting help from people?
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, one thing that I found works really well is asking for help on LinkedIn. Like, literally, I've got this issue. I don't know how to solve it. Does anyone know of like a piece of software or a graphic designer or what have you? And it's amazing what people will share. So there's that. But I also have like different groups of people who I turn to for different issues. So
yes,
people I ask for business advice. I've got like sort of a team of 4 or 5 people that I always ask for business advice. I've got a team of beta testers, like not just friends, but people who have a professional interest in looking at my content and looking at the things I'm making and giving me an objective assessment of whether it works or not whether they like it, but whether it actually does what it's supposed to. So I've got a really nice little network of these pods of people who I can always turn to and say, hey, what do you think? Am I doing this right? Am I missing something? And those kinds of questions.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, this group of people that you ask help from, is it like, how would you say roughly you've acquainted, you've acquainted them? Like, how did you get to knowing them? Or is there like I don't know, say a networking trick or something of that sort?
No, well, I mean, it's a very mixed bunch. Two of them are my brothers.
That's awesome.
A couple of them are people I've known for 20, 25 years, like really old friends. But others are professionals that I have a working relationship with.
Yes.
Who I've done some kind of work with in the past. Either I've worked as a freelancer for them, or we've collaborated together on a project, or I've consulted to them, or they've consulted to me, and we've got this kind of understanding of each other and where we are.
Yeah.
And I've asked all of them, like, are you open to me doing this? And it works pretty well.
Okay, no, that's awesome. And I know we went a couple of places, and what's like maybe the second thing that sort of stands out? I know the first is really working alone and struggling with getting help.
Don't buy into the hype. It's more of a thing now than ever. Like this whole idea of like the rock star entrepreneur, and it's just a bunch of rubbish. If you're not connected to your purpose, if you're not doing something that you truly, deeply, and completely believe in, it's very hard to survive the hard times.
Yes.
So it's really important to connect with the real motivation for why you're doing what you're doing. Because no one's so lucky that their business goes 100% good from the start.
True.
And so when bad stuff happens, when things go wrong, you need something to get you out of bed the next morning to try again. And if you don't have that sense of purpose, you can end up working in a business that you hate and that is grinding you to pieces. And then you've got to ask yourself, why don't I just have a horrible corporate job? It's the same,
Suffer the same.
Yeah.
Suffer while at least getting a consistent salary.
Now, so it's actually even better to have a soulless corporate job. So that's the other really important factor for me is your personal why, and making money is never the why. That's just an outcome, as Simon Sinek likes to say. The why has got to be the thing you think of when you have a bad day and you need to pick yourself up again. And you say, but I'm doing it for this. And you don't even have to share that with people. My one these days is that quite frankly, I want to change the world. I think the way the world is sucks, and it's wrong, and it's bad, and it needs to change. And when I tell people that, people look at me like,
yeah.
But it doesn't matter, because I know I can't overnight change the world. I'm not a politician. I'm not a billionaire. But I do know that I can influence people, and I can have an impact in their lives, and that one for one, that will have a knock-on effect. And that's what I'm busy with. And so when things go wrong, I remind myself that, like, well, you have actually changed things. And
yes,
if you just get up again today, you will still change more things.
And so changing the world, you'd say the stuff that you do sort of, I mean, giving a keynote, it's a keynote, yes, but it's in a sense, it's got technicality in it. So you are changing in the world in sort of giving people technical tools to prosper
and tell a pretty story. It's very much about giving people access to what they already have, making them understand that, hey, you have this amazing capacity within yourself. Here's some examples, and here's some tools how you can actually get in touch with it. So I'm very practically oriented in the keynotes. It's not just blah blah blah, nice story.
No, I wasn't saying that. That it's not. There are no technical sort of takeaways and technical structures that they can take and apply in their own lives. Often people, when they think of keynotes, they think of a motivational speaker speaking, and which is, I would say most times not the case.
No.
Yeah. Go on.
I don't like that label, motivational speaker. I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, it's got some connotations to it. But I sometimes I find myself listening to what do you call those? It'll be someone speaking that I'm motivated, I will win, and that somehow for me they sort of switch on certain knobs that were not on, and it turns away sort of the negativity, because over time when you're doing a couple of things and them not working out, you kind of like get demotivated. So I'm not taking a knock on motivational speakers, so to say.
No, I agree. I mean, those kind
Mhm.
of affirmations and positive self-talk, those are all, I mean, I use those tools. They are very important.
I'm glad I'm not alone.
No.
Yeah.
But I think if as a speaker, if all you're doing is jumping up and telling your story, I mean, that can inspire people, but it doesn't equip them to do anything with the story. And so for me, I want to be able to motivate and inspire and equip, so that by the time I'm finished yapping, they can walk out that door and do something different straight away.
Okay, brilliant. I love that. I love that. And now, let's to draw a sense of what I want to ask. Yes, let's say motivational speakers in that connotation that say we take them, although I think they're quite important. And then let's say technical speakers, I would put you in that sort of category, in that I when I listen to you giving a talk, giving a keynote, like immediately I can sort of take some takeaways from that. So now, which I would imagine it's a bit hard to market. How do you think one can bridge the gap between coming from a background where maybe your teachings are technical, and then also trying to strike a balance in terms of I mean, the messages are there, but also you need to deliver them in such a way that it can touch people in a way that it will help them take action, so to say.
Especially when you start doing something like keynote speaking, it's very important that you can find a way to make your messaging universal. So especially if you're in quite a technical, tight corner, if people can't relate to what you're talking about, they don't care and they don't listen and they don't learn.
Yeah.
So the story of your expertise is very important, and I've known I wanted to do keynote speaking for a very long time, and I always knew it was going to have something to do with creativity, but it's taken me a very long time to figure out the story so that people can listen to my pitch and go, oh yeah, that's important, I'm interested in that. And to be honest with you, that's been the most challenging part of the whole process for me, is discovering that. I've been speaking in public on stage, doing debates and public speaking competitions and emceeing and being on radio, since I was 10 years old. That's like,
wow, that's a lot of experience, eh?
So that isn't so much my challenge. I mean, not that I'm the best speaker, but I'm not scared. What has been difficult is the messaging and getting exactly what you're talking about, getting people to care about the fact that I've got this thing to share.
Yeah. And then how would you say what salient points would you, like, or rather, let me ask, how does one maybe shape a story so that, when I think of a keynote, I'm used to giving, workshops that run 2 hours or more. So I guess a keynote is maybe 40 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
What is there, like a structure that you can maybe share with us in terms of how to achieve that?
Well, I mean, literally an introduction, a body of content which is between 3 and 5 chunks, no more than that.
Okay.
A conclusion that summarizes what's happened in the 3 to 5 chunks. But that introduction serves a very important function. You've got to be able to identify the problem that your audience needs to solve, and you've got to make sure that you address that problem with your content. You say, what I'm about to tell you helps you solve this problem that you have. And that is the trick, identifying, because why are people going to hire you? Why are people going to come and listen? because they think there's something in it for them. And to make them think that, you've got to understand what they need. You've got to figure that out. And that really is extremely difficult to do. You know, market research, surveys, just talking to people, reading a lot, watching what's going on in social media. And then you've got to frame your content in a way that makes it obvious that you can help.
All right. And then per keynote, are you trying to solve, by the way, I'm asking for me. Are you trying to solve a couple of problems, or do you identify one problem that, you know, people will, you know, soul to soul identify with it?
No, I'm hoping to equip people to be able to solve whatever problem they have themselves. During the workshops, I do two things. One, we either learn the principles and practice with an example, or I go in with a team to sit next to them and help them solve a very specific problem. So there's, I do both.
Okay. And then I'm sure the ones you're busy with, is it the keynotes or is it the workshops, and maybe which one do you enjoy between the two?
They're so different. I love doing both, to be honest with you. I was a speaker before I was a workshop facilitator. But really my idea was that I'm representing myself as a speaker, firstly, because I think it's easier for a business to hire a speaker for 40 minutes than to hire a workshop facilitator for a whole day.
Yes.
You know, you can't, it's so difficult to take a team offline for a whole day to go and do a workshop where everyone can come and listen to a speaker over lunch. But the idea behind that is that when people hear the speaker, then they think, wow, okay, we need to know more, we need to do more, we need to actually work with this guy. And that's where the workshops come in.
Solve it. Okay, I like that. So it's more like a bait.
Yeah.
Not to say, let me give in this keynote, I'll help you address this point.
Yeah.
And then obviously that point would have technicalities that would need to be taught in a day. So let me take you to this. Say now again, you know, circling back to the book, The Entrepreneur's Emotional Toolbox.
Yeah.
Say I'm an artist, right? I've been, you know, trying to get into music. Let's say I'm a singer. I've been trying to get into music for a year, and then I'll also write, let's say, maybe poetry or whatever fiction.
Yeah.
And I've also got a job, but my you could say my music career sort of it's not going anywhere. I've been in the same city. I've been writing, you know, a particular genre. At that point, someone like that could say I've hit a wall, right?
Yeah.
What way would you say, you know, they could use to you know, maybe branch out, I guess, a bit, or yeah?
I have two questions. What do you want? Like, what is the if you could have anything, do you want to be a world famous poet, or do you want to be a rock star or a world famous rapper? Okay, so then they ask that question, and then I say, how much do you want it?
Okay.
In other words, what are you prepared to give up? What are you prepared to compromise? How much are you prepared to invest? And then it's a matter of checking whether their current effort level matches what
matches up to date.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because quite often, particularly with artists, there's actually a massive amount of cognitive dissonance going on. They say they want this, but if you look at the work they're putting in, it's nowhere near the level that other people who have got that thing, how much work they do.
They do, yeah.
So, and then the question is, okay, now you've seen that gap. Are you prepared to do the extra work? And the answer quite often is no. And that's actually a very important thing to realize. And it's like, okay, you don't really want this thing. You just like the idea.
Yes.
Then you can go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, what do I really want? You know, so I worked with a lot of bands, and what emerged over time is that they didn't want to be the biggest band in the country. They didn't want to tour the world. They said all of that, but none of that was true. What they wanted was to look cool, to have a good time, and to hear their songs on the radio a couple of times. And that was enough. And once we reached that level, motivation just disappeared. And that was a problem, because as their manager, I was operating on a different level with a different set of ideas.
You wanted to go all the way.
Yeah. And then it just kind of all, and then there's fights because now this one's not motivated enough and this one doesn't want to do that amount of work, because from the beginning, nobody ever had that discussion. What do we really want? What are we really prepared to do? And are we going to do it? Are we going to commit? And so quite often you'll find that when people have hit the wall, what they've really hit is the limits of what they're prepared to do.
So they've kind of like sort of gotten lazy in that particular field that they're in.
Yeah, and maybe they just didn't realize that they had to do much more. That's often the case. I mean, especially with music, right? People just they've got this idea that it's magic and like someone's going to discover me and it's just going to happen. But if you read biographies of famous musicians, that's never actually the story. Before that happens, there's always years and years of really hard work.
No
rewards until suddenly you get good enough or enough people notice you or the fashion changes or whatever it is. And then you're ready because you've put in so much effort that your skills are high, you've got the material and you're literally ready to go. But it also may never happen. And it could just be a complete waste of time. And that's why having purpose is so important, because even if you don't ever become that famous star, you will still have fulfilled your purpose. So on a human level, that probably
you're satisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then let's say, by the way, I would say this applies to being a fiction writer, non-fiction writer. I would say myself as someone who writes entrepreneurial books, I've often hit that wall wherein I hit the wall, say first book, okay, let me write the second one, let me write the third one, and so on and so forth. So say now this person has decided, look, I want to go big. Obviously the first thing will be to assess the work that they've been putting out. Do they now sort of, let's say, you're doing a certain music genre that it's not commercial. Do you then maybe pivot to another genre? Do you mix it up? How do you speak maybe to that? How does one try to snap out of that by, with the aim of going big?
Right. If your sole aim is to go big, which basically means to make money.
Yes.
Then
making it big is money.
Well, that's the question. Is that what this person means, that they want to make it big, as in they want to make money, or do they mean they want to be famous, but famous to who and where? You see, the first step is always to define what you mean by these things. Like, what does make it big mean? And so if make it big means I want to sell millions of units of my music and I want to be on radio stations across the planet and I want to be able to tour globally, then you got to ask yourself, people who do that, what do they have? And how do I get that?
Yes.
So you can benchmark yourself against existing success stories and say, okay, well, you need to have a record label or a booking agent or an international manager or a publisher. You've got to be able to travel easily. Hey, I don't even have a passport. Wait a second.
Okay.
It can be that practical.
Or a publicist, maybe.
Right. And once you've got the big picture, then you've got to ask yourself, okay, what's the first step? What can I do tomorrow that'll move me a little bit down the road towards this goal? And then each tomorrow, that's all you do. You just take the next step, the next step, the next step.
Yes, I like that.
If you don't have the goal in front of you, you don't know where you're going. So you could just be turning in circles.
And tell me, here's what as you're speaking, I'm calculating. The other point would be that you would need to spend some money and be prepared to lose it. Maybe getting a PR person, they don't come free unless if can devise means of getting them to work, sorting out some sort of arrangement.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to hire a PR person who's worth the money, you're going to have to be able to explain to them very clearly what your expectations are and what your goals are. So together you can measure whether they succeed or not. And if they succeed, then you've never wasted your money.
Yes.
And if they fail, you've got to look quite carefully at why they failed. And that could be because the idea you have, the time hasn't come yet. Maybe you hired the wrong PR person. or maybe actually the thing you're trying to sell, no one cares. And then you got to
That's the
take that
hard
on
one.
board, you know, and you got to let it go. You got to say, okay,
Yeah.
I'll make it big. Nobody cares about this.
Yo.
Put it away, start again.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, so you're saying maybe changing up the genre, for example, maybe tweaking it a bit.
If your goal is purely to be hugely successful, you need to be prepared to do whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah. Here's what I'm realizing with my own career. You know, I've got, I think it's 8 books so far. Some of them I would say they are sort of passion projects, passion products, which is okay. And I'm penning this one. The title is 90 Days to Create and Launch. And I created it with the mind of writing a commercial book, basically. And we're busy pitching it to bookstores, and we're getting tons and tons of pre-orders for the book. So it seems, and let me just be honest, I'm not necessarily enjoying writing it because it's not, I mean, it's not what I would say it's of passion to me. Of passion to me, normally it's things that are a bit novel. So that one, I'm also recalculating things that
Are you not enjoying it because it's really pushing you, or because you actually don't really care?
I care a lot. I think it's quite important. I'm not maybe enjoying it because I would say over the years I've gotten to write a bit technically. But now when I say 90 days to create and launch, I need to use the right analogies, like the simple language, and like it's pushing me, let's say.
Yeah. So that's okay. That's not a reason to give up. Because
absolutely,
that's at the limits of your current abilities. That's where interesting stuff really starts to happen. When you feel like you're almost stepping off the edge. Not quite, but almost. It's uncomfortable. It's hard work. It's not fun, really. It's kind of like, oh, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But that's where the magic happens. If you're working within yourself, within your existing knowledge, within your existing skill set, all you're doing is more of the same. So I would suggest that you're quite possibly busy now with a piece of work that is groundbreaking in terms of you and who you are and how you think and what you can achieve.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, sometimes it's difficult to tell. Am I struggling with this because actually I'm not passionate enough? Or am I struggling with this because it's quite confrontational? It's really pushing me.
True. Yeah. And let me just ask this question, and maybe it'll make a bit of sense. I'm gonna take it back to what we've been speaking about. Currently, you've got your set workshop, set keynotes, and do you take work from previous sort of skills that you maybe had 10 years ago, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's all related. I couldn't do what I'm doing now without what I'd done before, without the lessons, without the skills, without the connections, the realizations. It's all just stacking. It didn't always feel like that. But now I realize it really does. It's nothing I ever did was wasted. Even if it failed, even if I left it because I didn't like it anymore, what I learned, the experience and the skills, it's all contributed to this place where I currently am. And so that's why it's so important to realize that there isn't really any such thing as failure. If things don't work the way you wanted them to, you learn something and then you move on to the next thing. Sure, that thing failed, but you didn't.
Absolutely.
And that's how you just, you know, that's why we talk about older people as being wise, you know, because they've experienced a wider range of things that have either gone well or badly, and they've learned more stuff. And as long as you don't become bitter and inward looking, that gives you an amazing ability to cross-reference and to cross-pollinate and to really do some exciting stuff instead of just, staying in your lane your whole life.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you for that. Like I'm asking these questions. Some of them are for me, and I hope they help. So, what I'm capturing in this whole talk is that to maybe be able to handle sort of the emotional pressures of anything that you do, creative work as an entrepreneur and creative in say in other spheres, is that at certain points, like quite often, you need to sort of reflect and then see that how you're framing your past is gonna work for maybe draw a new vision, reframe the past, so that when you draw a vision, you know where to plug in that frame from the past and sort of to go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing for me that I learned somewhere along the line is to ask, am I going to die? If I do this, am I going to die? Is this going to kill me? And of course,
Yeah.
the answer is never yes.
Mhm.
It's always no. I mean, that might be difficult, but you're definitely not going to die. It's like, okay, I'm going to try.
Mhm. One point, maybe just to again, let me, as we're speaking about, to throw in is that you said when you visited Europe, you got a job. So I would say one thing that also has been important to me is I've got all these couple of things running, some of them from the past, but now and then they throw in a bit of money, and then when you re-envision where you want to go, re-envision where you want to go, there'll always be an element of funding there. So being able to get odd jobs there and there will help in funding that, and also getting maybe a job, bartending or whatever, graphic design, whichever thing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you've got a big picture, if you've got a sense of purpose, it's much easier to accept temporary measures that keep you going until the dream can be fulfilled. If you don't have that sense of purpose, those temporary measures seem to feel like setbacks, like failures.
Yes.
And then you get stuck.
You get stuck.
So that's another really good reason why this whole idea of purpose is so important, because it keeps your eyes on the horizon and allows you, well, it doesn't allow you, but it will help you to overcome setbacks.
I love that. Then I'll ask the last question. Again, it's for me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I've been penning this book. The title, or rather the draft title, it's Mine is Biological. I know, like, I don't know if who would be interested in that book. Maybe it's got a quite a niche market. And I would say maybe 70% in it. And I'm thinking of being a documentary as well, or that's one of the things that we could do. I don't want to say I'm stuck, but it's actually just something that I realized maybe a day ago, or maybe a way I can explore it. I realized that the 30% that's left probably will take me another 6 months to write it down. But I think the first part, it's good enough for a book. But now certain concepts, obviously, so in the book, hence I say Mine is Biological. I'm visiting a lot of biological history, evolutionary history, and connecting it to innovation. Now, I'm thinking of maybe, let me release it as whatever's written, let me release it as a Kindle book. Okay.
Just stop.
Yes.
Put the project down. Walk away.
Okay.
Don't think about it. Don't look at it. Don't try and solve the problem. Come back in a month's time, look at it again, and see what you think then.
I've done that for a couple of projects, and I think it worked.
Yeah. Sometimes we require emotional distance to be able to get a better overview of things that mean a lot to us. And when you're in it, it's very difficult to get perspective over it. And creatively speaking, it's also very important to do that, because that's when you see, oh, I can see the next step now. Right now, it sounds like you're trying to force the next step.
I am.
Right. Don't do that.
Yeah.
you're going to finish the book. How many books have you written already? I've lost
8 books.
Yeah, exactly. So you will finish it. So stop for now. Go and do some other stuff. Let it stew. Let it go in the back of your head and bubble away. You'll figure it out. And then come back in a month, maybe even 2 months, and look again.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for that. Like, that's and anyone who's watching this, is that creatives, we're always struggling with, I guess, emotion, right? Emotion is anxiety. Emotion makes us lose a sense of perspective. So I'm really going to ponder on that and just maybe walk away from the book and do that. And Mr. Chislett,
yep.
Thank you very much. For this. I guess we're trying to close now.
Yeah.
Any last points that you want to push across, and then where people can connect with you?
Yeah. Look, I mean, just to bring it back to the book that we're kind of talking about, is that remember that there are, rules are made for things in general, and we're all individuals. So it's always important to be able to cherry pick what works for you out of the rules. So while the entrepreneur's emotional toolbox is intended to help people in general, not everything in there is going to help you. And that's true for all the advice you'll see on LinkedIn, in your MBA, in any self-help or business book. Really important for you to take what's going to work for you. But you've got to use it. You've got to actually put the work in. And that, for me, as an attitude, will take you very, very far in life. And if you're interested in my work over and above the Entrepreneur's Emotional Toolbox, the easiest place to find me is davidchislett.com. And there you'll find links to all my socials. You can sign up for my newsletter, check out my Patreon page and my blog. And yeah, you'll see it all there.
All right. Thanks a lot for the therapy / mentorship session. Thanks a lot. Everything makes sense. And I think you've given a lot of technical points that anyone who's listening can maybe take one or two of them and apply in their lives. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for coming through. You're my first guest, the Tiisetso Maloma show. That's it, man. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right, Tiisetso.
Cheers.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. Ciao.